My name is Samantha Mitchell, 32, one of the youngest cruise ship captains in the industry. When my family decided to plan their dream vacation, they deliberately excluded me, saying they needed space from my boring ship stories. Little did they know they had booked passage on the very vessel I commanded. I stood on the bridge, watching them in the boarding line, anticipation building inside me. Before I share how their jaws dropped when my chief officer announced, "Welcome aboard, Captain," drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by the people who should believe in you most. Growing up in a coastal town in Maine, I always felt the pull of the ocean. My bedroom walls weren't covered with pop stars or movie idols, but with maps of sea routes and pictures of majestic vessels. My father, Thomas, ran a successful accounting firm where my older siblings Sarah and Michael eventually joined him. The Mitchell family business was a point of pride for everyone except me. "The sea is no place for a Mitchell," my father would say whenever I mentioned Maritime Academy. "Especially not a female Mitchell." My mother Diana would nod in agreement, already envisioning me in a sensible pantsuit crunching numbers like my siblings. Despite their disapproval, I applied to the Maritime Academy in secret. The day my acceptance letter arrived, I placed it on the dinner table before everyone sat down. The silence that followed was deafening. "This is just a phase," my mother finally said. "You'll come to your senses eventually," my father added, passing the letter back without finishing it. Sarah, 3 years my senior, smirked. "When you fail, don't expect Dad to create a position for you at the firm." Only my grandmother Eleanor showed any support, slipping me a check to help with expenses. "Your grandfather was a naval officer," she whispered. "The sea is in your blood, whether they acknowledge it or not." At the academy, I thrived. While my classmates struggled with navigation calculations, I excelled. When others complained about the rigorous physical training, I pushed through. For years later, I graduated at the top of my class, but my graduation ceremony featured empty seats where my parents and siblings should have been. Only Grandma Eleanor attended, her frail hands clapping the loudest when I received my honors. My career progressed rapidly. I started as third officer on cargo ships, then second officer on smaller cruise vessels. My competence and dedication pushed me up the ranks faster than most. By 32, I was offered the captaincy of the Oceanic Majesty, a luxury cruise liner with a capacity for 3,000 passengers and 1,200 crew members. It was an achievement almost unheard of for someone my age, let alone a woman. Throughout these years, family gatherings became increasingly tense affairs. My accomplishments were minimized, my stories interrupted. "Nobody wants to hear about maintenance schedules," Samantha, my brother, would say, before launching into a lengthy tale about tax audits. My relationship with my family deteriorated to obligatory holiday phone calls and the occasional birthday text. So when I didn't receive an invitation to the family reunion cruise my sister was organizing, I wasn't surprised, just hurt. It was my first officer, James Reynolds, who brought the passenger manifest to my attention 3 weeks before departure. "Captain, I was reviewing the VIP passengers for the Caribbean cruise, and I noticed something. There's a group booking under Mitchell. Any relation?" I took the tablet from him, and there they were, Thomas and Diana Mitchell, Sarah and her husband David, Michael and his wife Rachel, plus my 3 nieces and nephews. 10 cabins in total, including one for my grandmother Eleanor. "They're my family," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Did they know you're the captain when they booked?" James asked. "No," I replied, handing back the tablet. "And I'd prefer to keep it that way until they board." That night in my apartment, I called Grandma Eleanor. Despite her advancing age, her mind remained sharp. "Did you know about this, Grandma?" I asked after explaining the situation. "Yes, dear. Sarah organized everything. I asked why you weren't included, and she said you'd be working and wouldn't want to join a family vacation. But she knew I'm a cruise ship captain. She didn't think to check which ship." I don't think any of them actually believe you're a captain, Samantha, she said softly. Your father still refers to your boat job like you're working on a fishing trawler. The revelation stung, but it didn't surprise me. In their minds, I was still the stubborn daughter who'd chosen a peculiar hobby rather than a real career. They couldn't reconcile their accountant daughter with the reality of a woman commanding a 130,000-ton vessel. What will you do? Grandma asked. I thought for a moment, a plan forming. Nothing. I'll let them board like any other passengers. They'll find out soon enough. They certainly will, she chuckled. I wouldn't miss their faces for the world. As the departure date approached, I maintained absolute professionalism. I updated the crew about the situation, not because I wanted special treatment for my family, but because I needed my team to be prepared for any potential drama. The last thing I needed was personal conflict interfering with the safety and enjoyment of 3,000 passengers. My chief officer, Patricia Hayes, suggested having another captain take this particular voyage, but I refused. I've earned this position, I told her. I won't hide or switch shifts because they can't accept who I am. Patricia smiled and nodded approvingly. It's going to be an interesting cruise, Captain. Indeed it would be. The night before boarding, I stood on the empty bridge of the Oceanic Majesty, looking out at the Miami port lights, reflecting on the water. Tomorrow, my family would walk up that gangway, expecting a blissful vacation, completely unaware that the vessel carrying them across the Caribbean would be under my command. I wondered how they would react. Would they be proud? Embarrassed? Or would they simply pretend not to be surprised, rewriting history to claim they'd supported me all along? Whatever happened, I had prepared myself. This ship was my domain, my responsibility. Here, I wasn't the disappointing daughter or the misguided sister. I was Captain Mitchell, and for once, my family would have to acknowledge that reality. 8 months before the cruise, my sister Sarah created a family group chat specifically for planning the reunion vacation. I wasn't included, but I heard about it from Grandma Eleanor, who screenshot conversations for me despite her limited technology skills. We need this time to reconnect, Sarah wrote in one message. No distractions, no outsiders. My brother Michael replied, Does that include Sam? She's technically family, even if she's never around. Sam won't want to come, Sarah responded. She's always going on about her responsibilities and schedules. Besides, she'll just bore everyone with ship talk and make us feel bad for not being adventurous enough. My father chimed in. Samantha made her choice years ago. This trip is for those who prioritize family. Not a single person, not even my mother, suggested that perhaps excluding their daughter/sister might be hurtful. The only resistance came from Grandma Eleanor, who pointed out that perhaps they should at least ask me. Her suggestion was quickly dismissed. Grandma, you know Sam, wrote Sarah. She'll either decline and make us feel guilty, or she'll come and make everything about her career. It's easier this way. The irony that they were booking a cruise without inviting a cruise ship captain wasn't lost on me. It was as if they deliberately avoided acknowledging my expertise in the very experience they were seeking. 2 months before the cruise, I ran into my cousin Taylor at a coffee shop in Boston, where I was attending a maritime conference. I'm so excited for the family cruise, she exclaimed, stirring her latte. Sarah's been planning it forever. She even got us all matching t-shirts that say Mitchell Family Voyage 2025. When Taylor realized I wasn't invited, her face flushed with embarrassment. Oh, I just assumed. I mean, it's a cruise and I'm sure they meant to. It's fine, I assured her, though it wasn't. Which cruise line are you taking? Ocean Royal Lines, I think? On some ship called the Oceanic something. I nodded, maintaining a neutral expression. Sounds nice. I hope you all have a great time. That evening, I called my mother under the pretense of checking in. After 20 minutes of discussing my niece's dance recital and my brother's promotion, I casually asked, So, I heard there's a family cruise happening? The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Yes, well, Sarah's been organizing it, my mother finally said. We didn't think you'd be interested with your work schedule and all. Did anyone consider checking with me first? Honey, you're always saying how busy you are. We didn't want to pressure you. The excuse was flimsy, and we both knew it. I could have pushed further, demanded an honest answer, but what would be the point? Their exclusion had already made their feelings clear. Which ship will you be on? I asked instead. The Oceanic Majesty, she replied. Supposedly it's one of those massive floating resorts. I bit back the temptation to tell her that I knew exactly how massive it was, down to the last centimeter of its 1,041-foot length. Instead, I simply said, I've heard it's nice. You know your father, she continued, oblivious. He researched everything and insisted on booking the best cabins available. Cost a fortune, but he says the Mitchell family deserves nothing but premium experiences. The irony thickened. My father, who had never once asked about my responsibilities as captain, had likely spent hours reading online reviews of the very ship I commanded. 3 weeks before departure, I overheard a conversation that solidified my decision to keep my role a secret until boarding day. I was video chatting with Grandma Eleanor when my father entered her room, unaware that I could hear him. Mom, are you sure you're up for this cruise? He asked. It's 2 weeks at sea. I'm not dead yet, Thomas, Grandma retorted. Besides, I want to see the Caribbean one last time. Well, at least we'll have actual professionals looking after us, my father said. Not like those booze cruises Samantha probably works on. Grandma's eyes flicked toward her tablet screen, knowing I could hear. Thomas, you have no idea what Samantha's job entails. Perhaps you should ask her sometime. I know enough, he dismissed. Playing sailor and avoiding real responsibility. At her age, I was already managing the entire firm. I muted my microphone as he continued, each word reinforcing my resolve. Let them board my ship. Let them see what responsibility really looks like. The final flight came just days before departure. My sister Sarah posted photos of custom luggage tags she'd ordered for everyone, the Mitchells, sailing away 2025. 20 tags in total, one for each family member except me. I took a screenshot and sent it to Patricia, my chief officer. Ready for Operation Family Reunion? She texted back. More than ready, I replied. Make sure the bridge is spotless for visitors on day 1. As boarding day approached, I immersed myself in preparation. I reviewed passenger manifests, weather reports, and maintenance logs. I checked and double-checked our itinerary, ensuring every detail was perfect. Not because my family would be aboard, but because that's what I always did. That's what made me Captain Mitchell. The night before departure, I stood on my private captain's balcony, watching the lights of Miami twinkle along the shoreline. Tomorrow, the Oceanic Majesty would welcome 2,987 passengers for a 2-week Caribbean cruise. 10 of those passengers had no idea their vacation was about to become a lesson in respect. The morning of departure day, I woke at 4:30 a.m., 2 hours before my alarm. Sleep had been fitful, my dreams filled with confrontations and arguments that left me more exhausted than when I'd gone to bed. I performed my usual pre-departure ritual, a 5-mile run along the port, a quick breakfast, and a thorough review of the day's schedule. By 7 a.m., I was aboard the Oceanic Majesty, crisp in my white uniform with 4 gold stripes adorning each sleeve. My first stop was the bridge, where the night officers were completing their watch. Everything in order, Lieutenant Morris? I asked, accepting the logbook he handed me. Yes, Captain. All systems normal. Weather forecast shows clear skies for departure, with a slight chance of showers near our first port of call in 3 days. I nodded, scanning the instruments. The Oceanic Majesty hummed with pre-departure activity, engineers checking systems, stewards preparing staterooms, chefs receiving fresh provisions. 3,000 passengers would begin boarding at noon, and every detail needed to be perfect. At our 8 a.m. officer briefing, I addressed the elephant in the room. As some of you know, my family will be among our passengers today. I stated matter-of-factly. "They are unaware that I am the captain of this vessel." A few chuckles rippled through the assembled officers. "I expect them to be treated exactly like any other passengers, no special treatment, no exceptions to rules. If they approach you with concerns or complaints about me, direct them through proper channels." I paused, making eye contact with each officer. "My personal situation will not affect the operation of the ship or the experience of our passengers. Is that clear?" "Yes, Captain," they responded in unison. After the briefing, Patricia stayed behind. We'd been friends since Maritime Academy, and she knew my family situation better than anyone. "You sure about this, Sam?" she asked. "It's not too late to call in Captain Hernandez. No one would blame you for wanting to avoid the drama." I shook my head. I've been avoiding their dismissal for years. Maybe it's time they see me for who I really am, not who they think I should be. And if they make a scene, then we handle it professionally, like any other passenger situation. Patricia smiled. "Well, I for one can't wait to see their faces. Especially your father's." As boarding time approached, I felt the familiar flutter of anticipation I experienced before every departure. But today, mixed with my usual pre-voyage adrenaline, was a knot of personal anxiety. Would they be proud when they realized the truth? Embarrassed? Angry? Would they try to minimize my achievement, as they'd done with every other milestone in my maritime career? I pushed these thoughts aside as I conducted my pre-boarding inspection. Every corridor, every public space needed to meet my exacting standards. The oceanic majesty wasn't just my responsibility, it was my home, my domain. Here, I wasn't the disappointing daughter or the wayward sister. I was the final authority, respected for my expertise and leadership. At 11:30 a.m., I returned to the bridge to observe the boarding process on the security monitors. Watching passengers file up the gangway always filled me with pride. These people had chosen to entrust their safety and enjoyment to my ship, my crew, and ultimately, to me. At 12:45 p.m., I spotted them, the Mitchell family, arriving in 2 large SUVs. My father emerged first, every inch the successful businessman in his polo shirt and designer sunglasses. My mother followed, then Sarah with her husband and children, and Michael with his family. Finally, a porter helped Grandma Eleanor from the vehicle, settling her into a wheelchair for easier boarding. Through the high-definition security feed, I could see them clearly enough to read their expressions. They looked excited, carefree. A family embarking on a long-awaited vacation. They gathered for a group photo in front of the ship, my father pointing up at the vessel with an air of ownership, as though he'd built it himself. A mixture of emotions swirled within me as I watched them join the boarding queue. Part of me, the part that still sought their approval, wanted to rush down and greet them, to show them my domain and finally earn their respect. Another part, the wounded child who'd been excluded once again, wanted to avoid them entirely, to command this ship for 2 weeks without acknowledging our connection. But the strongest part, the captain, the professional, knew exactly what to do. I would maintain my position and my dignity. I would not seek them out, nor would I hide from them. When our paths inevitably crossed, it would be on my terms, in my uniform, with my rank clearly displayed. "Captain, the Mitchell party is approaching final check-in," reported Communications Officer Lawson. "Would you like us to implement any special protocol?" "Standard VIP welcome procedure," I replied. "And notify Chief Officer Hayes that I'll be joining her at the captain's welcome reception at 1800 hours. Traditionally, I greeted special passengers personally during boarding, but today I would make an exception. Let my family board like everyone else. Let them settle into their premium suites, explore the ship, perhaps even brag to fellow passengers about their successful accounting firm. The real welcome would come later." As departure time neared, I performed my final duties, reviewing weather updates, confirming our departure clearance with port authorities, and checking that all 3,000 passengers were safely aboard. Every action was executed with the precision and confidence that had earned me command of the oceanic majesty. At 16:30, I gave the order to cast off. Standing on the bridge, I felt the subtle vibration as the massive engines engaged, slowly propelling us away from Miami. Through the panoramic windows, I watched the coastline begin to recede, the familiar exhilaration of departure washing over me. For those precious moments, I forgot about my family somewhere below decks. I was simply Captain Mitchell, guiding my vessel toward open water, toward adventure. The peace was short-lived. At 1700 hours, Patricia arrived on the bridge with news. "Your brother visited the purser's office," she reported. Apparently, he wanted to know if the captain would join their table for dinner one evening, a special experience for their family reunion. What did the purser tell him? That such requests need to be submitted in writing for consideration, as the captain's schedule is carefully structured. I nodded, imagining Michael's reaction. He was used to getting his way through charm and family connections. He also asked about a bridge tour, Patricia continued. Again, standard procedure was explained. And my grandmother? Patricia smiled. She's booked for the captain's table tomorrow night. Made the reservation months ago, apparently. That sounded like Grandma Eleanor, the only one who'd bother to research the ship's traditions and opportunities. The only one who truly understood what my position meant. As the sun began to set over the Atlantic, casting golden light across the wake of the Oceanic Majesty, I prepared for the captain's welcome reception. In my dress whites, captain's hat tucked under my arm, I took one last look in the mirror. The woman who stared back was confident, accomplished, in command. Tonight, the Mitchell family would finally see that woman too. "Ready, Captain?" Patricia asked from the doorway. I straightened my shoulders and nodded. Time to welcome our passengers properly. Boarding day on a cruise ship is organized chaos. From my vantage point on the bridge, I watched as thousands of excited passengers streamed through the terminal building, their vacation officially beginning the moment they stepped onto the gangway. The Oceanic Majesty's boarding process was a well-orchestrated symphony. Passengers checked in at designated stations, received their ship cards, passed security screenings, and were directed to their staterooms by our attentive crew. Behind the scenes, luggage was sorted and delivered, provisions were stowed, and final safety checks were completed. "Captain, all passengers' safety briefings are scheduled for 1,700 hours, reported my safety officer, Lieutenant James Wilson. "Excellent. I'll address Group A personally," I replied, reviewing the passenger distribution chart. My family had been assigned to Group C, deliberate scheduling on my part to ensure our paths wouldn't cross until the formal welcome. Through the security monitors, I tracked their progress. My father led the procession, his bearing suggesting he owned not just the accounting firm, but the entire cruise line. My mother followed, already wearing a sun hat despite being indoors. Sarah and Michael herded their respective families, while a crew member assisted Grandma Eleanor in her wheelchair. They passed through security without incident, collected their ship cards, and posed for the obligatory welcome photo against a tropical backdrop. I zoomed in on their ship cards, Suite 1542 for my parents, neighboring cabins for my siblings and their families, and Suite 1546 for Grandma Eleanor. All premium accommodations on Deck 15, with private balconies and concierge service. "The Mitchell party has boarded, Captain," confirmed the chief purser through the intercom. "All VIPs now accounted for." "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Please ensure their luggage receives priority handling." Despite everything, I wouldn't let personal feelings affect my professional standards. Every passenger deserved exceptional service, even those who'd excluded me from their family vacation. At 1,545 hours, I left the bridge for my scheduled cabin inspection. This was standard procedure before departure, a final check of random staterooms to ensure our housekeeping standards were being maintained. As luck would have it, Suite 1550 was on my inspection list, just 2 doors down from Grandma Eleanor's cabin. The timing was calculated. My family would likely be settling in, perhaps exploring their accommodations or standing on their balconies admiring the port view. I moved efficiently through the corridor of Deck 15, nodding to passing crew members who stood at attention as I approached. My uniform, crisp white with gold epaulets and stripes indicating my rank, commanded immediate respect. Here, in these hallways, I was unquestionably in charge. Rounding the corner toward the 1540 series suites, I heard familiar voices. My heart rate increased, but my exterior remained calm, professional. Absolutely magnificent, came my mother's voice from the open door of Suite 1542. Thomas, come look at the bathroom. There's a jacuzzi tub. I continued my approach, clipboard in hand, the perfect image of a captain performing routine duties. The girl said the captain's welcome reception is at 6, my father's voice carried into the hallway. We should attend. Might be good networking. Never know when cruise line executives might need accounting services. I almost smiled at the irony. 10 feet away now. I'm just glad we're finally having quality family time, said Sara, emerging from her suite directly into my path. She froze, her expression morphing from casual happiness to shock to confusion. Good afternoon, I greeted her professionally. Welcome aboard the Oceanic Majesty. Sara's mouth opened and closed without producing sound. Behind her, my brother Michael appeared in the corridor, then stopped abruptly. Sam, he managed. What are you? Why are you dressed like that? Before I could respond, my father's booming voice came from inside the suite. Kids, come check out this view. You can see all the way to. He stopped in the doorway, eyes widening as they landed on me. My mother appeared beside him, her hand flying to her mouth. Hello, Dad. Mom. I maintained perfect composure. I trust your boarding process went smoothly? Samantha. My father's authoritative voice had risen half an octave. What is this? Why are you dressed as a ship officer? Just then, my first officer Patricia rounded the corner, stopping beside me with a perfect salute. Captain Mitchell, engineering reports all systems ready for departure. We await your command. The corridor fell silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in my family's heads as they processed what they were hearing. Thank you, Officer Hayes, I replied. Inform the bridge I'll return shortly to issue departure orders. Patricia nodded and continued down the corridor, but not before I caught the slight smile tugging at her lips. I turned back to my stunned family. If you'll excuse me, I have duties to attend to before we depart. Please enjoy the welcome reception this evening. I look forward to greeting you formally. As I moved to continue my inspection route, my father found his voice. Wait just a minute, he demanded, his tone the same one he'd used when I announced my Maritime Academy acceptance. What is going on here? Are you actually saying you're the captain of this entire ship? I straightened to my full height, meeting his gaze directly. Yes, Mr. Mitchell. I am Captain Samantha Mitchell, Master of the Oceanic Majesty. I've held this command for 18 months. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 3,000 passengers and 1,200 crew members depending on me to ensure a safe and pleasant voyage. I continued down the corridor, feeling their stares on my back. As I turned the corner, I heard my grandmother's delighted laughter from her open cabin door. Oh, Thomas, Grandma Eleanor chuckled. The look on your face is priceless. Did none of you actually Google the ship you booked? The captain's biography is right on the website. The rest of the afternoon proceeded according to schedule. I returned to the bridge, conducted final safety checks with my officers, and at precisely 1,630 hours, gave the order to cast off from Miami. Standing at the helm as we navigated out of port, I felt a profound sense of vindication. For years, my family had dismissed my career as a whim, a phase, a poor substitute for joining the family business. Now they were passengers on my ship, quite literally under my command. At 1,730 hours, I made the traditional captain's announcement welcoming passengers to the Oceanic Majesty. My voice echoed through every cabin, every corridor, every public space. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Samantha Mitchell speaking. On behalf of Ocean Royal Lines and our entire crew, I welcome you aboard the Oceanic Majesty. We have just departed Miami and are setting course for our first destination, Grand Cayman. I continued with the standard welcome message, weather information, and safety reminders. Somewhere on Deck 15, I knew my family was listening to my voice with new understanding. At 1800 hours, I arrived at the Grand Ballroom for the captain's welcome reception. As per tradition, I would stand at the entrance with my senior officers, greeting passengers as they arrived. Each guest would receive a personal welcome and the opportunity for a photograph with the captain, a cherished cruise memento. I took my position, adjusting my formal captain's hat. The ballroom doors opened, and passengers began to enter, many dressed in their finest attire for this first evening at sea. 20 minutes into the reception, I spotted them, the entire Mitchell family approaching the entrance. My father led the group, his expression a complex mixture of shock, disbelief, and something that might almost be pride. My mother clutched his arm, her social smile firmly in place despite her evident discomfort. Behind them came Sara and Michael with their spouses, all looking equally stunned. My nieces and nephews, however, seemed excited, pointing at me and whispering among themselves. At the rear, a crew member pushed Grandma Eleanor's wheelchair. Unlike the others, she beamed openly, her eyes twinkling with delight. They joined the reception line, inching closer to where I stood greeting passengers. I maintained my professional demeanor, smiling and welcoming each guest with the same warm courtesy. Finally, they reached the front of the line. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Chief Officer Patricia Hayes, standing beside me, broke the silence with perfect theatrical timing. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell," she announced formally, "may I present Captain Samantha Mitchell, Master of the Oceanic Majesty." My father's face flushed red. My mother's smile froze in place. Sara and Michael exchanged uncomfortable glances. Before anyone could speak, Grandma Eleanor's wheelchair pushed forward. She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. "Captain Mitchell," she said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear, "your ship is magnificent. The Mitchell family is honored to sail under your command." With those words, the dynamic shifted. Other passengers looked on with interest, many smiling at what appeared to be a proud family moment. My father, ever conscious of appearances, quickly recovered. "Yes," he managed, extending his hand stiffly. "Quite an impressive vessel you have here, Captain." I shook his hand professionally. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I hope you and your family enjoy your voyage with us. Now, shall we take the traditional welcome photo?" The photographer positioned us, me in the center in my captain's uniform, my family arranged awkwardly around me. The camera flashed, capturing forever the moment when the Mitchells had to acknowledge that the daughter they'd excluded from their cruise vacation was, in fact, the master of their ship. As they moved into the ballroom, I overheard my youngest nephew asking excitedly, "Uncle Michael, does this mean Aunt Sam is our boss for the whole vacation?" Michael's pained expression was answer enough. The morning after boarding day, I conducted my routine inspection tour of the Oceanic Majesty. Starting from the bridge, I made my way through every deck, checking operations and greeting both passengers and crew. This daily ritual allowed me to maintain visibility and ensure our standards were being met throughout the vessel. On the Lido deck, I paused to observe breakfast service at the Horizon Court buffet. Through the glass doors, I spotted my family seated together at a large table near the windows. My father was gesturing emphatically while the others listened, their breakfast seemingly forgotten. I hadn't planned to approach them yet, but as I continued my inspection route, my path took me directly past their table. Professional courtesy demanded I acknowledge them like any other passengers. "Good morning," I greeted them, stopping briefly at their table. "I trust you're enjoying your first morning aboard." My words created an immediate hush. 6 adult faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from embarrassment to defiance. Only Grandma Eleanor and the children seemed genuinely pleased to see me. "Captain Sam," exclaimed my 9-year-old niece Emma. "Mom says you're in charge of everything on the whole ship, even the swimming pools." I smiled at her enthusiasm. "That's right, Emma. My officers and I are responsible for every aspect of ship operations. Can you show me the control room?" "Please," she begged. "Bridge tours are scheduled for sea days," I explained. "Your parents can sign you up at the excursions desk." My father cleared his throat. "Samantha, we need to discuss this situation. Perhaps somewhere private." "I'm on duty, Dad," I replied calmly. "But I have a dinner opening at the captain's table tonight. You're welcome to join me, all of you." I glanced around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. 1900 hours in the grand dining room. "Please let the maitre d' know if you'll attend." Without waiting for a response, I continued my inspection tour, maintaining the same professional demeanor I showed all passengers. Behind me, I heard the conversation explode back to life, my sister's indignant whisper carrying despite her efforts. "She could have told us. This is so embarrassing." Throughout the morning, I caught glimpses of my family members around the ship. My parents at the guest services desk, possibly inquiring about changing their dining arrangements. Sarah and her husband by the pool, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion. Michael taking photos from the promenade deck, periodically glancing toward the bridge as if trying to spot me. At 1100 hours, Patricia found me reviewing navigation charts in my office. "Your grandmother is requesting a meeting, Captain," she reported. "She's waiting in the library lounge." I checked my watch. "I can spare 15 minutes. "Thank you, Officer Hayes." The library lounge was a quiet sanctuary on deck 8, featuring walls of books, comfortable leather chairs, and panoramic ocean views. Grandma Eleanor sat by the window, her wheelchair positioned to face the door. "There's my captain," she smiled as I approached. "May I buy you a coffee, or are you not allowed to accept gifts from passengers?" I sat across from her, returning her smile. "I think I can make an exception for my grandmother." After ordering coffee from a passing steward, I turned my attention fully to her. "How are you enjoying the cruise so far?" "The ship is magnificent, Samantha. You must be so proud." Her eyes, still sharp despite her 82 years, studied me carefully. "Though I suspect my enjoyment exceeds that of your parents at the moment." "They're upset," I acknowledged. "They're embarrassed," she corrected. "Not because their daughter is a ship's captain, which they should be shouting from the rooftops, but because they've been dismissing your career for years, and now their ignorance is on full display." I sipped my coffee, letting her words settle between us. "Your father spent the entire night researching your position," she continued. "Did you know the captain of a vessel like this has responsibilities equivalent to managing a small city?" "I might have mentioned that once or twice at family gatherings," I replied wryly. "Yes, well, it seems he finally listened." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "They're coming to dinner tonight. All of them," Thomas insisted. "Are they coming to support me or interrogate me?" "Probably both," she admitted. "But they're coming, Samantha." That's a start. The rest of the day passed in a blur of duties, a safety drill, meetings with department heads, navigation calculations for our approach to Grand Cayman. At 1800 hours, I returned to my quarters to prepare for dinner. The captain's table was a cruise tradition. Each evening, 8 passengers would be invited to dine with me, enjoying special menus and engaging conversation. Usually, these dinners were pleasant affairs filled with curious questions about maritime life and light-hearted vacation stories. Tonight would be different. I dressed carefully in my formal dining uniform, white jacket with gold braids, black trousers with a perfect crease, polished shoes. Every element of my appearance needed to reinforce my authority, my competence. At precisely 1900 hours, I entered the grand dining room from the staff entrance. The maitre d' escorted me to the captain's table, where my family was already seated. The tension was palpable, evident in rigid postures and forced smiles. Good evening, I greeted them, taking my seat at the head of the table. Thank you for joining me tonight. Dinner began with strained small talk, comments about the weather, the ship's amenities, tomorrow's port of call. My father asked pointed questions about the vessel's specifications, testing my knowledge. I answered each query with the ease of someone who commanded this floating city daily. After the main course was served, my mother finally addressed the elephant in the room. Samantha, why didn't you tell us you were the captain of this specific ship? All eyes turned to me. I set down my fork and knife, taking a moment to compose my response. Would it have changed your decision to include me in the family vacation? I asked quietly. The table fell silent. Sarah stared at her plate. Michael shifted uncomfortably. That's not fair, my father interjected. We assumed you'd be working unavailable. Did anyone ask me? I interrupted, maintaining a calm tone despite the emotion building inside me. A simple text, Sam, we're planning a cruise. Would you like to join us if you can get the time off? That's all it would have taken. More uncomfortable silence followed. We didn't think. Sarah began. No, you didn't, I agreed. You didn't think my career was real enough to consider. You didn't think to check which ship you were booking. You didn't think I might want to be included in a family reunion, even if I couldn't attend. My youngest nephew broke the tension by asking loudly, "And Sam, do you get to steer the ship?" I smiled at him gratefully. Sometimes. We have sophisticated navigation systems, but yes, I take the helm during complex maneuvers. This prompted a barrage of excited questions from all three children, temporarily lightening the mood. As dessert was served, the conversation tentatively shifted toward genuine interest in my position. How many crew members report to you? My brother-in-law asked. Directly? 15 senior officers. Indirectly, all 1,200 crew members. And you're responsible for everyone's safety? My sister inquired, a new note of respect in her voice. Every passenger, every crew member, every minute of every day, I confirmed. The captain's authority on a vessel is absolute, but so is the responsibility. As coffee was served, my father cleared his throat. I may have underestimated the scope of your position, Samantha. Coming from Thomas Mitchell, this qualified as a profound apology. Perhaps, I suggested, you all might like a private bridge tour tomorrow? See what I actually do. The children cheered immediately. The adults exchanged glances, then nodded. We'd like that, my mother said softly. As dinner concluded, I stood to return to my duties. If you'll excuse me, I need to check our approach vector for tomorrow's arrival in Grand Cayman. My father stood as well, extending his hand formally. Thank you for dinner, Captain. I shook his hand, noting the subtle shift in his expression, the beginning of genuine respect. You're welcome aboard my ship anytime, I replied, meaning it despite everything. As I walked away, I heard my niece stage whisper to her brother, our aunt is the boss of the whole ship. For the first time since spotting my family's name on the passenger manifest, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The revelation was complete. They had seen me, truly seen me, in my element. Whatever happened next, that recognition could never be taken away. The morning of our arrival in Grand Cayman dawned clear and bright. I had been on the bridge since 0500 hours, overseeing our approach to the port. Unlike some destinations on our itinerary, Grand Cayman had no cruise ship dock large enough for the oceanic majesty. Instead, we would anchor offshore and transport passengers to Georgetown via tender boats. This operation required precision. I worked closely with my navigation team to position the ship perfectly, accounting for currents, wind conditions, and the location of coral reefs. At 0730, we dropped anchor precisely on our designated coordinates. I made the standard announcement informing passengers of our arrival and the tender schedule, then prepared for the bridge tour I'd promised my family. They arrived promptly at 0900, having been escorted from the guest elevator by Officer Hayes. The children bounced with excitement, while the adults maintained a more reserved demeanor, though I noticed their eyes widening as they took in the sophisticated equipment surrounding us. "Welcome to the bridge of the Oceanic Majesty," I greeted them formally, before softening into a more personal tone. "This is where all major ship operations are controlled and monitored." For the next hour, I guided them through a comprehensive tour, explaining navigation systems, communication protocols, safety procedures, and the various responsibilities of bridge officers. The children asked endless questions, which I answered patiently. The adults remained somewhat subdued, occasionally exchanging glances that spoke volumes about their reevaluation of my career. "This is actually quite impressive," Samantha, my father, finally admitted, studying the complex radar system. "The level of responsibility is substantial." "It is," I agreed simply. As the tour concluded, I escorted them to the priority tender boarding area. "Enjoy your day in Grand Cayman. The last tender returns at 1630 hours. Please don't be late. The ship won't wait, even for the captain's family." My sister Sarah hung back as the others moved toward the exit. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. "Just us." I checked my watch. "I have 20 minutes before my next meeting. We can use my office." My captain's office, adjacent to the bridge, offered both privacy and a spectacular view of the turquoise Caribbean waters. Sarah sat across from my desk, fidgeting with her wedding ring, a nervous habit since childhood. "I owe you an apology," she began without preamble, "for excluding you from the planning. For all the times I've dismissed your career as less important than the family business." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "It's just, you were always the rebel, Sam. When you left for Maritime Academy instead of college, Dad was furious for months. It was easier to side with him than to defend you." "I never asked you to defend me," I pointed out. "Just to respect my choices. I know that now." She gestured around the office. "Seeing you here in command, it's not what I imagined. When you said captain, I pictured something much smaller, much less impressive." "That's the problem, Sarah. None of you ever bothered to imagine what my life actually looks like. You created a narrative where I was playing sailor rather than building a serious career." She had the grace to look ashamed. "You're right. We were wrong." She hesitated, then added, "Dad's having a hard time admitting it, but he is impressed. I heard him telling someone at breakfast that his daughter commands a vessel worth over $1 billion. I almost smiled. Of course, my father would quantify my achievement in monetary terms. "We're having a family dinner tonight in the Constellation restaurant," Sarah continued. "Will you join us?" "Not as the captain, but as our sister, our daughter." "Just Samantha." I considered her invitation. "I have official duties until 2000 hours. I could join you after that." "We'll wait," she promised, standing to leave. "And Sam? Your niece hasn't stopped talking about how her aunt is the captain. You've become her new hero." After Sarah left, I returned to my duties, monitoring weather reports, reviewing passenger excursion counts, attending a department head meeting. Throughout the day, I spotted my family members returning from their island excursion, laden with shopping bags and sporting fresh sunburns. At 1700 hours, the last tender returned to the ship. I gave the order to weigh anchor, and the Oceanic Majesty began its journey toward our next destination, Jamaica. That evening, I changed from my uniform into civilian clothes, a simple black dress, and minimal jewelry. At 2015 hours, I entered the Constellation restaurant as Samantha Mitchell, family member, rather than Captain Mitchell, master of the vessel. The maitre d' led me to the private dining room my family had reserved. As I entered, the conversation halted. 8 adult faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from warm welcome, Grandma Eleanor, to cautious respect, my father. "Sorry I'm late," I said, taking the empty seat between my mother and grandmother. "We had some weather to navigate around." "Is everything all right?" my father asked, his tone suggesting genuine concern for the ship rather than criticism of my timing. "Perfect," I assured him. Just standard procedure to ensure a smooth sailing experience. As dinner progressed, the conversation gradually relaxed. My mother asked about my apartment in Miami, my life when not at sea. Michael inquired about my training, seeming genuinely interested in the path I'd taken to reach my position. After dessert was served, my father cleared his throat, his traditional signal that he had something important to say. The table quieted. "I think we owe Samantha an apology," he began, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he typically reserved for business meetings. When she chose Maritime Academy over business school, I was certain she was making a mistake. I've spent years believing that. He paused, meeting my eyes directly. "I was wrong. What you've accomplished, it's extraordinary. Not just for Mitchell, but for anyone." Coming from Thomas Mitchell, this was equivalent to a gushing emotional speech. I felt a lump forming in my throat. "We should have included you in the planning for this trip," my mother added. "Even if you couldn't join as a passenger, you should have been part of the conversation. Instead, you became part of the experience in a way none of us anticipated." Grandma Eleanor chuckled. "I'd call that poetic justice." The tension that had lingered since their boarding finally dissipated. For the remainder of dinner, we talked and laughed like a normal family, something we hadn't done in years. I shared sea stories that had them alternately gasping and laughing. They updated me on family news I'd missed during my long deployments. As the evening concluded, my father raised his glass. "To Captain Samantha Mitchell," he toasted. "The most accomplished Mitchell of our generation." Coming from the man who had dismissed my career ambitions for a decade, those words meant more than any professional accolade I'd received. The next morning, I resumed my duties as captain with a lighter heart. During my daily inspection tour, I encountered my family members enjoying various ship activities, each greeting me with newfound respect. My father and brother observed the engine room tour with genuine interest. My mother and sister attended my noon navigation presentation in the ship's theater. My nieces and nephews boasted to other children about their aunt the captain. That evening, as we sailed between Caribbean islands under a canopy of stars, I stood on the bridge, monitoring our course. Patricia joined me, coffee in hand. "Your family seems to have adjusted to the revelation," she observed. "They're trying," I acknowledged. "It's a start." Was it worth it? Not telling them beforehand. I considered her question, watching the moonlight dance across the gentle waves. Yes, I finally decided. They needed to see me here in command. They needed to understand that this isn't just a job, it's who I am. Patricia nodded, understanding the significance. "By the way, your father requested a meeting with the hotel director this morning." "Oh!" I raised an eyebrow. "Apparently, he wants to organize a surprise celebration for you on the final night of the cruise. He asked about booking the grand ballroom." I smiled, shaking my head slightly. Thomas Mitchell never does anything halfway. Should I have the hotel director approve it? Yes, I decided. Let them plan their celebration. After all, that's what family vacations are for, creating memories together. As Patricia left the bridge, I turned my attention back to the vast ocean stretching before us. For 10 years, I had sought my family's recognition, their respect. Now that I finally had it, I realized something important. I'd never actually needed it. I had built this career, earned this command, without their approval. Having their respect was gratifying, but knowing I'd succeeded on my own terms was far more valuable. The Oceanic Majesty continued its course through the night, 3,000 passengers sleeping peacefully under my watch. Among them, the Mitchell family, finally complete. 6 months after the Mitchell family reunion cruise, as it had come to be known, I stood on the bridge of the Oceanic Majesty preparing for another Caribbean departure. The Miami skyline gleamed in the late afternoon sun. Passengers were boarding below decks, and my officers moved with practiced efficiency around me. "Captain Mitchell," called Communications Officer Lawson. "VIP guests arriving at the priority boarding gate." I glanced at the security monitor and smiled. There they were, my parents, Grandma Eleanor, Sarah, and Michael with their families, all wearing matching t-shirts that read Captain Mitchell's Crew, with a cartoon ship beneath. Thank you, Officer Lawson. Please inform them I'll meet them in the VIP lounge after departure procedures are complete. The past 6 months had brought remarkable changes to my relationship with my family. Weekly video calls had replaced sporadic text messages. My father had visited the Maritime Academy to better understand my training. My mother had redecorated their guest room with nautical themes for my visits home. Most surprisingly, Sarah had brought her daughter Emma to Miami during her spring break for a girls' weekend with Captain Aunt Sam. We toured maritime museums, visited my apartment, and I'd introduced her to female officers from other vessels, showing her that women could command in a traditionally male field. As boarding continued, I completed my departure checklist, then addressed my crew for our pre-sailing briefing. As you're aware, my family is aboard again, I told them. This time as invited guests. I appreciate your professionalism during their last visit, and I know I can count on the same excellent service for all our passengers during this voyage. After the briefing, Patricia lingered on the bridge. Quite a change from last time, she observed. Your father actually requested a ship's log for Emma's school report on maritime careers. I smiled. Apparently my niece has decided she wants to be a ship's captain too. My sister nearly fainted when she announced it at Thanksgiving dinner. And your father? He asked what courses she should focus on in school to prepare for Maritime Academy. Patricia's eyebrows shot up. Now that's character development. At precisely 1,630 hours, I gave the order to cast off. The massive engines engaged, propelling us away from the dock with practiced precision. Over the shipwide communication system, I made my standard departure announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Samantha Mitchell. On behalf of Ocean Royal Lines and our entire crew, welcome aboard the Oceanic Majesty. We have just departed Miami and are setting course for our first destination. After completing departure procedures and ensuring we were safely navigating through the shipping channel, I left the bridge in Patricia's capable hands and made my way to the VIP lounge. My family greeted me with hugs instead of shocked stares this time. Emma immediately launched into questions about navigation and weather patterns for our journey, while my father nodded approvingly at her interest. We've got a surprise for you, my mother announced. We've booked the private dining room for tonight and invited some of your senior officers to join us. You didn't have to do that, I protested. We wanted to, Sarah insisted. Last time was about us coming to terms with your success. This time is about celebrating it properly. That evening in the private dining room, surrounded by family and colleagues, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Not just my career path from cadet to captain, but the emotional journey my family had taken from dismissal to skepticism to reluctant respect to genuine pride. During dessert, my father stood to propose a toast. Unlike the awkward acknowledgement of 6 months ago, his face now showed unguarded pride. To my daughter, Captain Samantha Mitchell, he began. 10 years ago, when you chose the Maritime Academy over the family business, I thought you were making a terrible mistake. I couldn't understand why anyone would choose the uncertainty of the sea over the security of Mitchell Accounting. He paused, looking around the table. I was wrong. You weren't running away from responsibility. You were running toward a bigger one than I could imagine. You're responsible for thousands of lives every day. You command a vessel worth more than our entire company. He smiled. And you do it with a competence and grace that makes me wonder if perhaps I chose the wrong career. Laughter rippled around the table. I'm sorry it took actually boarding your ship as a passenger to recognize your achievement, he continued. But I'm grateful for that wake-up call. And I'm incredibly proud to be your father. As glasses clinked around the table, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't realized I was missing. My professional accomplishments had always brought satisfaction, but having my family finally understand and appreciate my chosen path added a layer of personal fulfillment. After dinner, I excused myself to complete my evening rounds. My father accompanied me, curious about the routine checks I performed each night. As we walked the promenade deck, he asked, "Do you think I was too hard on you when you chose this path?" I considered his question carefully. "You wanted what you thought was best for me. You couldn't see that this was where I belonged. I should have trusted your judgment. And I could have done more to help you understand my world," I acknowledged. "We both made mistakes." He nodded, gazing out at the moonlit ocean. "Well, you certainly proved your point in dramatic fashion." I'm not sure I'll ever live down the moment when my daughter was revealed as the captain of our family cruise. "Grandma Eleanor still talks about your face in that moment," I laughed. "She would," he grumbled good-naturedly. "She's been your biggest supporter all along." "She saw me more clearly than anyone," I agreed. "She understood that I needed to find my own way, not follow someone else's path." We completed the circuit of the deck in comfortable silence. As we approached the elevator that would take him back to his suite, he paused. "The most important lesson I've learned from all this, Samantha, is that recognition has to be earned, but respect must be freely given. I failed to respect your choices until you forced me to recognize your success. I won't make that mistake again, with you or with Emma, if she decides to follow in your footsteps." "Thank you, Dad," I said simply. The remainder of the cruise passed in a blend of professional duties and family bonding. My parents joined the bridge tour I conducted for interested passengers. Sarah and I spent an afternoon in the ship's spa, reconnecting as sisters rather than captain and passenger. Michael consulted me about his daughter's interest in engineering, finally seeing me as a resource rather than a rebellion. On the final night of the cruise, as we sailed back toward Miami under starlit skies, I found a quiet moment alone on the observation deck. The oceanic majesty cut smoothly through gentle waves, 3,000 souls sleeping peacefully under my protection. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, not just the physical journey from port to port, but the emotional voyage from excluded daughter to respected captain. I had navigated both with determination, weathering storms and adjusting course when necessary. The revelation that had unfolded on that first family cruise had permanently altered our family dynamic. Where there had been dismissal, there was now respect. Where there had been exclusion, there was now inclusion. Where there had been misunderstanding, there was now genuine interest. Some might say I'd engineered the situation for maximum impact, letting them discover my position in the most dramatic way possible. Perhaps that was true. But sometimes people need a significant wake-up call to see what's been in front of them all along. As I prepared to guide the Oceanic Majesty back to port the next morning, I knew I'd also guided my family to a new understanding, not just of my career, but of me. The journey had been challenging, but the destination was worth every difficult nautical mile. Have you ever been underestimated by the people closest to you? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if the story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the people who should see your value most clearly are the ones who need the most convincing, but that doesn't diminish your worth. Thank you for coming aboard my story, and may you always find fair winds and following seas in your own journey.